Welcome to DC Direct. I'm Lionel Donovan. In each show, we'll be breaking down the key issues that are shaping the U.S. landscape. But we want you to weigh in. So feel free to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at TRTWorld. And reach out to us with the hashtag DC Direct and be a part of the conversation. In today's show, we'll be talking about the recounts surrounding this year's midterm elections.
The midterms might have wrapped up, but that doesn't mean the U.S. election season is over. Quite a few races ended with some lean victories, and some ended with the victor just squeaking by. But with such tightly contested races, sometimes another look at the ballots is needed to determine the winner. When that happens, it means it's time for a recount. Recounts are needed to make sure elections are run as fairly as possible, and to ensure no mistakes were made when the votes were counted the first time. One of the reasons recounts receive so much attention is because they're actually pretty rare. Since 2000, only 28 recounts have been held in over 5,200 general elections. Out of those 28, only 15 were deemed to be close enough to actually change the results. And only 3 resulted in a reversal of the original results. Right now, Florida is in the middle of a recount for its Senate and governor races, and Georgia is moving into a recount for its House of Representative races. The state's undecided race for governor may result in a recount as well.
Recounts can be tedious and time-consuming, but they have to be done in order to make sure that everyone's vote is accounted for. So what exactly goes into a recount, and why are they necessary?
To find out, we sat down with journalist Sarah Burris, and she discussed one of the reasons why recounts have become more important in recent elections.
In any democracy, you're going to have close races like this, so it's not surprising. One of the things that's changed over the last couple of years, though, is that there are just more people voting. There are more people in the United States and more people voting. The county officials and the equipment used to count votes hasn't really kept up with the population. So you end up with, like, let's say 1 million people voted in the state of Florida in 2000. Well, now you're looking at more like 2 and 3 million people, but you're still having the same number of people who are counting the votes, the same number of machines that are counting the votes.
Do you think that with all of the issues that you brought up surrounding these midterms and the recounts, do you think that might affect how elections are held next time?
I just hope that maybe at some point there would be some kind of funding for more machines and more resources for folks who want to count votes. I know in California it takes them weeks and weeks, if not months, just to count their votes because there are so many people there.
Burris also reminded us why they're so necessary and just how much weight one vote holds.
Last year, the state of Virginia has off-year elections, so they had their state elections in 2017. And there was an election that was decided, I think it was the state Senate election that was decided by a single vote. And that vote determined which way the state legislature would swing, whether it would be Democrats in control or Republicans in control. So there were a lot of lawsuits around that race, and ultimately it came down to they were fighting over one vote.
A lot was riding on this year's midterms, and a shift in the balance of power was felt all around Washington as the polls closed. We met with political analyst Doug Sloan, who walked us through what each side could gain after the midterms, in order to get an idea of just how much was at stake and why some candidates would want to go through the trouble of a recount.
All of this stuff is incredibly important because right now these recounts are happening at we see them happening at the state level, at the congressional level, and these are very close margins for some of these governorships and for some of these senators. The U.S. Senate is important because they confirm judgeships. If there are articles of impeachment, the impeachment trial will happen within the Senate. So the Republican majority and the number of Democrats in the Senate is very critical to how things play out.
Can you tell me why you think that people seem to be paying a lot more attention to these midterms and these recounts? Like, why do you think people are so involved in this election season in particular?
We've seen a trend of people seemingly coming to realize how important their vote is, and that is critical. In a representative democracy, voting is important. Being involved in the electoral process is important because ultimately these people that you elect have say-so over your lives. They will help to write legislation and implement laws by which you will have to abide by and you will have to live by. So it's very important that people get out and vote. And it's very important that people, and we're beginning to see this, they are starting to realize the power of the vote and realize the importance of being politically involved.
Democracy isn't a fixed or static institution, but a process. And that process is constantly being tested. These tests are never more apparent than during election season and the transfer of power. These transfers can be messy at times, but they reflect a wider change in the United States, both within Congress and the new state governments taking shape around the country. Well, that's all the time we have today in DC Direct, but please be sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at TRTWorld, and reach out to us with the hashtag DC Direct and let us know how you think the U.S. is handling this year's midterm recounts. Until next time, I'm Lionel Donovan.